We have a volunteer military in the United States. That, in many senses, is a good thing. Most people don't want to be in the military. And having enough people volunteering prevents the United States from having a draft and conscripting people to military service. Now, that being said, the size of the military that the government thinks we need is insanely overblown. It's caused by the number of bases we have around the world and a whole host of other foreign policy reasons. But let's put that aside for now. We have a volunteer military, and I prefer that to having a draft. And the military has screening guidelines. One of the problems that we've been talking about for the last many years is extremism in the military. We've talked about it in the Air Force years ago. We've talked about it more recently across all branches. And more recently, we've even been drilling down into white nationalism in the military. We did a story a little while ago about 11 military members who were members of this group called Identity Europa, which is a white nationalist group. That's one example. We, as in most normal people, don't want white nationalists in the military. We don't want them in our police departments either. We've talked about that. That's a story for another day. So the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, had a measure in it in the House to screen for white nationalist beliefs to keep them out of the military. That's a good provision. That provision was quietly removed last week with no fanfare by the Republican-controlled Senate because the provision for screening out white nationalists was in the version sent to the Senate by the House, no longer in the version that the Senate marked up. The revised Senate version no longer has a provision in it to screen for white nationalism. Instead, it just says the military has to screen for extremist and gang-related activity. White nationalism is a major problem. It was included in the document. Someone had to go in and remove it, and indeed it is now gone. The Senate version with white nationalism removed has been sent to Donald Trump for signature. Now, you might say, sort of seems like a small tweak. Who really cares? Well, why did the Senate go out of its way to remove that provision? They were given the House version, and they said, let's take out the part about screening for white nationalism. Who changed the language? As of yet, it's unclear. Huffington Post contacted U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee Chairman Jim Inhofe, a Republican from Oklahoma, didn't respond as of this filming to the Huffington Post's requests for why that language was removed. And this is a problem that is growing. They have infected the military. The Senate has removed what is, quite frankly, not even a really significant provision meant to keep them out. It just says, let's screen for white nationalism. Why did they do it? Who are they appeasing? Why won't they explain who did it or why it was done as of just a few hours ago? Donald Trump, remember, announced on Twitter that trans people will be found and kicked out of the military. But milquetoast language to screen out white nationalism has been removed. Very often, when the left talks about the rise of white nationalism in the United States, the rise of anti-Semitism, I see a lot of comments that say this is totally overblown. This isn't really an issue. Very often, those are tacit defenses of Donald Trump, because to concede that there's a rise implicitly points the finger at Donald Trump. But this is a very real and present thing in the United States under Trump. And as I've said before, I'm not saying Trump created racists. I'm not saying Trump created new white nationalists. What is undeniable is that Donald Trump has emboldened and coalesced extremism. Even people like Richard Spencer, a white nationalist, told me that this is what Donald Trump has done. And even just what is, again, it's a pretty flaccid measure. Just let's screen for white nationalism. Why would it be removed by the Senate? Very, very strange. And hopefully at some point we will get an answer to that. I am thrilled to tell you that today's episode is sponsored in part by Blinkist.com/Pakman. Blinkist is a really unique service for your phone, tablet, and web browser. And it is incredibly useful for people like me who love books and learning but are busy. Blinkist takes the best and most popular nonfiction books and condenses them into 15-minute audiobooks. I'm sure that if you're like me, you have a very long list of books that you've been meaning to read. You only have so many hours in the day, and that's why Blinkist is so amazing. They take the most important information, the themes, the insights from each book, and they distill it into a 15-minute audiobook that you can listen to in one sitting. I've listened to a ton of books on Blinkist, our audience can get a 7-day free trial by going to Blinkist.com/Pakman. If you're watching on YouTube, I put a link in the description. I have listened to Blinkist books about economics, about political science, about history, about science. So many interesting things. And after the free trial, if you like it, you can continue enjoying thousands of condensed audiobooks for about $5 a month. Go to Blinkist.com/Pakman. That's BLINKIST.com/PAKMAN.